Srila Prabhupada Lilamrta, Additional Pastimes. Around the World, 1967 to 1969, and 1972 to 1975. Additional Pastimes of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, by Satsvarup Das Goswami. Chapter 10, A World Tour, Part 1. January 1975. From Bombay, Srila Prabhupada planned a world tour beginning January 25th that would take him to 12 major cities within 50 days, ending back in Bombay. His journey would not only completely orbit the planet eastward, but would dip into the southern hemisphere as far south as Venezuela. It would be the 8th time Srila Prabhupada had traveled around the world in his 10 years of preaching since going to America from India in 1965. He would enter 7 different countries and travel 34,000 miles. Due back in India by March for the 2nd international gathering of his disciples at Sridham Mayapur, Srila Prabhupada would have to move quickly. Almost 1,000 ISKCON devotees from all over the world were planning to be in India for this year's festival. This year was very special because after years of work and 2 prematurely announced openings, Srila Prabhupada would at last hold the grand opening of the ISKCON Krishna Balaram Temple in Vrindavan and install the deities of Gaur Nitai, Krishna Balaram, and Radha Shyamasundar. Srila Prabhupada had come to Vrindavan in September 1974, desiring to open the temple on Krishna's appearance day, but he had been disappointed by delays in construction. At that time, Srila Prabhupada became seriously ill in Vrindavan. His fever dangerously high, he had given permission to devotees in all the ISKCON temples to hold 24-hour kirtan to pray for his recovery. He had gradually regained his health, and he was now eating and translating again after several weeks. Srila Prabhupada wanted to travel before the Mayapur Vrindavan festival, but he had been delayed in Bombay, waiting for the local government to grant the no objection certificate so construction of his temple could begin. When Srila Prabhupada's governing body commission secretary for South America, Sri Dayananda Goswami, wrote asking him to please visit South America, he replied, quote, "Yes, I want to come there very much. Now we are in Bombay, trying to get permission from the government to build our temple, and it appears that we will possibly be getting the permission next week. If this works out, then I will immediately be going to Honolulu, and from Honolulu I can go directly to Mexico City, then Caracas. Ellipses. If the Bombay situation is not settled up, I may have to stay until mid-January." Unquote. But not until the end of January did the Bombay municipality finally grant the no objection certificate. Srila Prabhupada was then free to travel. Prabhupada had said on different occasions that he traveled to keep his devotees spiritually alive. Although sometimes Srila Prabhupada would say he wanted to stay in one place and write his books, he regularly felt compelled to oversee personally the growth of his Krishna consciousness mission on each continent. His time was limited, he felt, and he wanted to strengthen his disciples in their execution of Krishna consciousness so they could continue in his absence. He had to travel. But even while traveling, he would continue his translation and commentary of the Srimad Bhagavatam wherever he stopped. Despite his advanced age of 80 years, despite the disruptive travel hours, the jet lag, and the inconveniences of waiting in airports and of customs delays, Prabhupada was determined to maintain his writing schedule wherever he went. Srila Prabhupada's literary paraphernalia was a dictating machine and reference books. A secretary, Paramahansa Swami, a personal servant, Srutakirti, and a Sanskrit student, Nitai, were Prabhupada's traveling entourage. In this way, he was prepared to preach and write anywhere and everywhere. His first stop was Hong Kong. Paramahansa Swami. It was always funny to be in the airport with Prabhupada. People would just come up and without any introduction say, "Hi, what are you doing?" And Prabhupada would start speaking with them on that level. It was really different than hearing him talk with the devotees. Sometimes they would come up with a weird question. Prabhupada would give a humorous answer, and often the person wouldn't understand and would leave. Only one disciple, Trivikram Swami, was stationed in Hong Kong. But just before Srila Prabhupada's arrival, Panchadravida Swami arrived from Bangkok to greet Srila Prabhupada. Sudama Vipraswamy, who had disassociated himself from ISKCON, also showed up for Prabhupada's arrival. These three sannyasis greeted Prabhupada at the airport. Trivikram Swami had rented a luxury suite at the Hong Kong Hilton for Srila Prabhupada and had arranged a speaking engagement in the Hilton's convention hall. About 200 Indians and a few Chinese attended. After speaking 40 minutes from the first verse of the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Srila Prabhupada concluded, "If you want to get out of Maya's activities, then you have to take to Krishna consciousness. There is no other way out. This is a scientific movement. Anyone intelligent, any thoughtful person, he must take to Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, he is doomed." During Srila Prabhupada's 2-day stay, the devotees took him to a park in the heart of the city. It was so crowded with people that Srila Prabhupada declared it hellish. When they passed people doing Tai Chi exercises, Trivikram Swami called such activity useless. "Do not criticize," Srila Prabhupada said. As they walked on, Sudama Vipra Swami told Prabhupada of the floods in Mayapur. The devotees had lived on the roof of a shack and had had to fight off the snakes, seeking shelter there. Srila Prabhupada appreciated. "Yes, you did much service at that time." Prabhupada asked of another devotee the difficulties he had faced in Krishna consciousness. Each told of some incident of austerities. "What was your most troublesome time in Krishna consciousness, Srila Prabhupada?" Trivikrama Swami asked. Prabhupada became silent, then said, "Better you don't ask." In the devotee's small apartment, Prabhupada affirmed that Hong Kong was an important place to preach. Even if only one man remained, they should still develop the center there. "We can print Chinese Bhagavad Gita," Prabhupada said. "Someday China will open, and we can go in." Panchadravida Swami had only come to visit Prabhupada, but Prabhupada told him, "You shall become our new manager for the Hong Kong Center." When Prabhupada said this, the other devotees responded, "Jai, Jai." But Panchadravida Maharaj felt bewildered. "I have to stay in Hong Kong," he thought. But then he remembered the letter Prabhupada had just written him. Prabhupada had stated that a devotee must be like a reaping machine. The Bengali saying is that a reaping machine will reap wheat in heaven or hell. So the devotee must serve Krishna in heaven or hell. Panchadravida had considered returning to India, but now, Prabhupada said, "It is not very important if you go back to India. The only thing that is important is to continue service." The important thing was to distribute books in Hong Kong, Prabhupada told him. It doesn't matter whether people come to the programs. Somehow he should publish books in the Chinese language and distribute them. In this way, the work would go on. Tokyo, January 27th and 28th. Suspicious Japanese immigration officials delayed Srila Prabhupada and considered not giving him a visa. Granting no more than a 2-day transit visa, they finally allowed him to enter. After such a poor reception, Prabhupada was royally greeted by Dai Nippon printers of Tokyo. Their white-gloved, uniformed chauffeur picked up Srila Prabhupada at the airport in a Mercedes and drove him to the ISKCON Center. Even though Srila Prabhupada's BBT was printing with American printers by 1975, Dai Nippon was still competitively bidding for their work. The BBT was an important contract for any printer to gain, and Srila Prabhupada was the BBT's sole author and publishing director. A seasoned traveler, familiar with the sights and sounds of almost every continent, Srila Prabhupada was accustomed to these short stops in the Orient. When in India, he could tell his godbrothers and friends about lands and peoples they had only read of in books. Yet, wherever Srila Prabhupada went, he remained fixed in transcendental consciousness. His lectures on the Bhagavad Gita in Tokyo were the same as in Hong Kong or in America. The message, "Surrender to Krishna," was universally and urgently applicable in every town and village. But sometimes Srila Prabhupada would spice his talks with local references. "Everyone is suffering, that's a fact," Srila Prabhupada said during a class in the small Tokyo ISKCON temple. He was describing the inherent miseries in material life. "Just like now," Prabhupada said, "2 big directors of Dai Nippon Company came to see me. We have got business with them, so they are meeting so many problems for their printing work. They are maintaining about 200,000 people to carry on their business. They have a huge establishment, huge responsibility, but there are problems also. So, this material world is full of problems. One who understands this is called Sura, or a civilized man." Citing the alternative miseries of heat and cold, Prabhupada referred to Tokyo's cold climate, which was so severe that it prevented him from taking his morning walks. "This winter season comes, and we do not want chilly cold. Therefore, we are covering our body," Prabhupada said. "The cause of our covering is that we are suffering. But after covering, if we feel some pleasure, what is this pleasure? It is only for the time being, some arrangement that we stop suffering. This is the nature of material enjoyment." Japanese students were attending Prabhupada's classes, and Prabhupada addressed them directly. "When we are in danger in Japan," Prabhupada said, "you have got many times the experience of earthquake, do you not? So, what do you do at that time? You all, Japanese boys and girls, what do you do? Have you experienced earthquake? You have? What do you do at that time?" Prabhupada paused in his talk, inviting the Japanese boys and girls to speak out and tell him something, but they sat still, looking at him silently. "When there is earthquake," Prabhupada continued, "what do you do, But I have seen in America, they scream." Prabhupada's audience broke into laughter. "And perhaps they remember about God," Prabhupada said. "Naturally, they will remember. God save us. That means that we do not wish to die. That's a fact. You cannot say that death is a very good thing. No one will say. But we have to die. But you don't want death. This is suffering. And not only in death, but even in lifetime, just like we are an old man. Who wants to become an old man? Everyone wants to remain youthful. This is undesirable. This is suffering. Actually, we are suffering because we are an old man. We are suffering so many diseases, so many inconveniences. If I am not helped by 3 or 4 men, then I cannot move even. So this is suffering. just like now in Tokyo City, Prabhupada continued. You are making very big buildings everywhere, all over the world, to live very comfortably. But that comfortable life is also not assured, because you will have to die. Therefore, it is called ashashvatam, not permanent. This is to be understood first. Those who are intelligent, they are very pessimistic. And one who is satisfied with this temporary so-called happiness, he is called asura. By the grace of the Krishna consciousness movement, the asuras were becoming suras, Prabhupada concluded. For this he was traveling, to give them education, to understand what is absolute truth. Only if one took to Krishna consciousness could he become sura, the perfect man, and make his life successful. Prabhupada gave 2 lectures in Japan. In his second talk, he argued that because there is design in nature, there must be a designer. His logic and his examples were precise and vigorous. He referred to local governmental organization within a city and how it is controlled by persons. Similarly, when I see that the cosmic order is working so nicely and symmetrically and reasonably, how can I say there is no controller? How can you say logic? Tell me, anyone, can you say anyone? How can you say there is no controller? Jagad ahur anishvaram. What is their logic? You tell me. Prabhupada wanted a challenge from his audience, so he pointed to his secretary. You are sometimes on their side. What is their logic? Paramahansa. Well, no controller is ever seen. Prabhupada. But you have not seen who is the Japanese government's president. How can you conclude there is no government? You have not seen the president or the supreme head, but how can you say there is no government? Otherwise, how is it going on so nicely? You may not see so many things, but that does not mean anything. That is not good logic, that I have not seen. Someone in the audience put forward the theory of chance, and Prabhupada responded with great enthusiasm to defeat the nonsense theory. Krishna is not alone, Prabhupada said. Krishna means that he has got many energies. Just like a tiny person like me, Bhaktivedanta Swami, I have this movement, and I am not alone. I have got so many assistants all over the world. I was the originator, I was the founder, so I am not alone. Similarly, as I have expanded with my disciples in so many ways, in so many places, I can expand. I am a common man, but how can Krishna expand? We can just imagine. He is the Supreme Lord. Advaitam, Achyutam, Anadim, Anantarupam. He can expand himself. But he is the only person. He is doing everything. Just like I am replying to dozens of letters from all over the world and trying to manage, similarly, he is also maintaining alone, Anantarupam, by unlimited assistance. Parasya Shaktir Vividhaiva Sruyate. You have to understand like that. Among the dozens of letters and the worldwide managerial problems Prabhupada referred to, a particularly disturbing bit of news arrived during his 2-day visit to Japan. The police in Germany had raided the ISKCON temple in Frankfurt and confiscated money from the bank accounts. They had trumped up charges of solicitation fraud, and a mass propaganda war was mounting against Krishna consciousness through inimical German media. When Prabhupada received a distressed letter from his leader in Germany, Hang Sadutta, he asked that Hang Sadutta come and meet him in Hawaii. Now, while in Japan, Prabhupada received a telegram from Bhagavan Das, the GBC for Southern Europe, who would temporarily manage affairs in Germany. Prabhupada replied, try to manage Germany, London, and Paris. The main business in Germany is to reply to the charges and rescue the frozen money. In England, we have to revive the Ratha Yatra festival, which has now stopped by the police intrigue. In Paris, you require a larger place to accommodate devotees, so find out a suitable place. In this way, even while traveling rapidly, staying only a day or two in faraway places, Prabhupada received and replied to messages regarding the urgent affairs of his worldwide movement. These affairs were always on Srila Prabhupada's mind in one way or another. He alone was the ultimate judge of the affairs of ISKCON, and he knew best ISKCON's inner workings. As he had said in his class, he was assisted by many expansions, and yet he was still the single supreme person in ISKCON. In this case, supreme not only meant the most exalted and worshipable personality, but the person who had to take the most anxiety and whose deliberations were the most demanding. This also confirmed the need for Prabhupada's traveling. By traveling and inspiring the leaders in each city and country, he could avoid disasters and irregularities and keep his armies strong on all fronts against the invasions of Maya which were liable to occur, and which were occurring from day to day. Hawaii, January 29th to February 9th. Srutakirti. On the Pan Am Airlines from Tokyo to Hawaii, Prabhupada was reading something about women's liberation. He said, "If these women want to be liberated, then tell them to shave their heads like us and they can be liberated." Prabhupada asked Nitai Das to call one of the stewardesses over and tell her, "If you want to be like a man, then shave your head." "Go ahead," Prabhupada nudged Nitai. "Cut a joke, call her over here, tell her." Nitai hesitated, but Prabhupada seemed serious. "Tell her to shave her head. Then she can be a man if she wants to be liberated." Although Prabhupada repeatedly asked that he call the stewardess and make the joke, Nitai wouldn't do it. So Prabhupada finally let it go. It wasn't the first time Srila Prabhupada was faced with a controversy when he arrived in Hawaii. Hawaii was such a place where groups of devotees gathered who did not want to follow strictly the rules and regulations, and who supported their deviancy from the ISKCON norm with their own philosophies. One such devotee, after breaking away from ISKCON, had gathered his own followers and preached to them and to newcomers that it was best not to live in the temple. He did not advocate that one follow the rules and regulations strictly, nor did he conduct any organized preaching activity, only casual chanting of Hare Krishna. Prabhupada tolerated this leader and his splinter group, even though it was his own ISKCON they were criticizing. He wanted to encourage anyone who was chanting Hare Krishna or desiring to be his follower. If they chanted Hare Krishna, he said, they would gradually be purified. Those living outside the temple and following the principles loosely said that Prabhupada approved of their activities and of their leader, while those devotees living faithfully in ISKCON criticized the divergent group. Arguments went back and forth, and Srila Prabhupada's arrival became an occasion for direct confrontation. That Prabhupada was traveling to all his ISKCON centers, including the ISKCON in Hawaii, and not to the other group's headquarters, was in itself conclusive. When there were threats to his one and only temple when ISKCON was located at 26 2nd Avenue in New York City, he had been like a worried father. But now, Prabhupada's transcendental worries had expanded as his family spread out into 100 centers in countries all over the world. After Prabhupada arrived in Hawaii, some of the persons involved in the controversy brought their philosophical issues before him. He once again clarified his position and the position of his true followers. While walking one morning with devotees on Waikiki Beach, Prabhupada answered their questions about the nature of pure devotional service. Devotee: I've heard there is a philosophy here among some of the devotees that if you chant Hare Krishna, you can go back to the spiritual world, even if you do not give up your independence. Prabhupada: So what is your philosophy? Devotee: Well, it seems that's somewhat hypocritical, because chanting Hare Krishna means that you are praying to Krishna to please be engaged eternally in his service and to become completely dependent on him. So we try to explain like that. We try to follow all the teachings and instructions, attend Mangalarti and morning and evening class. Prabhupada: So what is your philosophy? Devotee: This is repeated here. Okay, so we try to follow all the teachings and instructions, attend Mangalarti and morning and evening class. Prabhupada: So they are doing that or not? Devotee: No, they're not even following regulative principles. Prabhupada: Then? Devotee: They think that just by chanting, they will go back to the spiritual world. That is enough. Prabhupada: Then what is the meaning of the 10 kinds of offenses? If he is chanting without offense, then it is all right, but if he is committing offenses, then it will not be effective. There are 10 kinds of offenses. Whether he is strictly offenseless, then he is all right. If he is offender, then it will not be fruitful, or it will be fruitful, but it will take a long time. Because, first of all, you must become offenseless. So, if they are committing offenses, how can they be perfect? He is committing the offense of not following the rules and regulations. That means he is thinking that whatever I can do will be adjusted by chanting the name, is it not? Devotee: Yes, that's one of the offenses. Prabhupada: That is called the greatest offense. Namno balad yasyahi papa buddhihi. I can go on committing sinful activity, but by chanting Hare Krishna mantra, it will be adjusted. That is the greatest offense. So explain it to them. The devotees then asked if such chanting without following the regulative principles strictly was just a waste of time. It was not a useless thing, Prabhupada replied, but it was a very slow process. He compared it to kindling a fire and at the same time pouring water on it. Another devotee protested that all devotees living outside the temple weren't breaking the regulative principles. He knew many who were following. Prabhupada replied, It doesn't matter that you have to live in the temple. Not that everyone has to live in the temple. If he does not agree with his other god brothers, friends, he can live separately. But he must follow the rules and regulations. That is wanted. But if you live with the devotees, it will automatically be done. Devotee: Yes, then it is easy. Prabhupada: Therefore it is recommended that you live with devotees. But if you cannot agree with the devotees, you have got your own opinion, then you still can't make a new opinion as far as following the process is concerned. It is not a good idea to say, whatever I do, that is my independence, and I will chant. Prabhupada admitted that even if one was living in the temple but his mind was not absorbed in Krishna consciousness, then he also could not advance quickly. But the great advantage of living in the temple could not be denied. Prabhupada: It is just like even in ordinary business. If you transact business in the stock association, you get good business. And outside the stock association, you don't get good, because the association is there. There are many purchasers and many sellers. So, if you have to sell, you get an immediate purchaser. And if you have to purchase, there is an immediate seller. Therefore, the stock exchange is there. So, if we live together in the stock exchange of devotional service, then you can help me and I can help you. So, our business will go on nicely. And outside the market, you can live 300 miles away from the stock exchange, but you will not get so many business opportunities. Devotee: You'll miss the opportunities. Prabhupada: Yes. Therefore, if you want to do business, you must take the first opportunity, the greatest opportunity. That is intelligence. And if we think, all right, I shall do it slowly, and in 700 lifetimes I shall become perfect, that is another thing. Devotee: It is riskier to stay outside. Prabhupada: Oh yes. Otherwise, why are you opening so many centers and making arrangements that we shall provide you with shelter, with food? These are the facilities. You live here. Do whatever is your capacity in the temple. Don't sleep, but work. That is our teaching. Satang prasangat. And Rupa Goswami also says, Sato vritehe sadhu sangad bhaktihi prasidyati. If you live with the association of the devotees, then it will be quickly fruitful. And if you live with these ordinary men, then whatever you've got will be finished very soon. In another verse it is said that it is preferred to live within a cage surrounded by fire than to live with the non-devotee. The essential thing was to follow the order of the spiritual master, Prabhupada stated, whether in or out of the temple. He recalled that he also did not live within the temple, but still he always strictly followed his spiritual master's order. Wherever you live, Prabhupada said, if you follow strictly the instruction of the Guru, then you remain perfect. But if we create concocted ideas against the instruction of the Guru, then we go to hell. Yasya prasadad bhagavat prasado, yasya prasadan nagati kutopi. There is no more shelter. Finished. If the Guru thinks, this person, I wanted to take him back home, back to Godhead, but now he is going against me, he is not following prasad, then when he is displeased, everything is finished. One of the devotees asked further how one can serve the spiritual master while working at an outside job. Say I have some outside job. I'm living outside, but I'm not giving 50% of my income. So then that job I'm doing, is it actually under the authority of the Guru? Prabhupada: Then you are not following the instruction of the Guru. That is plain fact. Devotee: So that means the whole activity during the day, working, that means that I'm not following the instruction of the Guru? It's unauthorized activity? Prabhupada: Yes. If you don't follow the instruction of the Guru, then you have fallen down immediately. Another confrontation took place in Srila Prabhupada's room with devotees who insisted they could faithfully obey Srila Prabhupada but could not follow his GBC representative or his ISKCON. One dissenter had devised an intricate philosophy that Srila Prabhupada was all-knowing and expert spiritually, but not materially. Prabhupada can't build a jet engine, he said. He can't build a nuclear reactor. Therefore, he is not expert materially, but he is expert spiritually. Most of the devotees rejected this concoction. According to Shastra, the pure devotee, unlike the yogi, completely depends on Krishna for his ability. The yogi tries to develop powers to do wonderful things like walking on water or becoming invisible, but a devotee's powers come through his surrender to Krishna, who creates his devotee's expertise. According to this new theory, since Prabhupada had to depend on his own men, his disciples, to know what was going on in ISKCON, he was unaware of how badly the GBC were mismanaging, of how they were misconducting the book distribution, and of how they were mistreating the devotees. Prabhupada was not aware because these activities were occurring on the material platform. In this way, they reached their conclusion of faith and trust in Prabhupada, but refused to work within his society with his representatives. The devotees in Prabhupada's room had formerly been leaders of ISKCON Hawaii, but had left and were now threatening to use the funds and properties in their own name. Prabhupada kept asking them simply, "Why did you leave? Why don't you stay? Why don't you surrender?" But they insisted that while they trusted Prabhupada, they could not trust the GBC. One of the GBC members in the room became exasperated with the refusal to accept Prabhupada's simple request of surrender. "You say that you accept Prabhupada." "Yes," they replied. "And you say you have faith in him." "Yes." "You say that whatever he asks, you can follow?" "Yes." "So, then, if Prabhupada asks you to follow the GBC, will you do it?" The room became tense and silent. "No, we cannot follow." When they uttered that no, Srila Prabhupada dropped his fist on his table and pointed to the deviant devotees, declaring, "Just see the hypocrisy." Even after Prabhupada's stark conclusion, they maintained their "we surrender to you but not to ISKCON" philosophy, until Prabhupada asked them to leave. To the other devotees remaining in the room, Prabhupada remarked, "When they say they don't like ISKCON and the GBC, they are really saying they don't like to follow my order. That means they don't like my order. That means they don't have faith in my order. That means don't they have faith in me. That means Guru Aparad. To say they have faith in me is just hypocrisy." Srutikirti. Finally, Prabhupada was ready to leave. Just before he was ready to go, he said he wanted to see me. He said, "Srutikirti, so now you are going to stay here? Your wife is here, and child?" I said, "Yes, Prabhupada." He said, "Yes, so stay here as householder and manage the temple." But all along I was thinking I really should go with Prabhupada. He had no one with him. He had no servant or anything. But I said, "Yes, Prabhupada, I think I should stay." And he replied, "So that is good. Yes, you stay here with your wife." But one of the sannyasis in the room started laughing and said, "Yes, you know what they call the wife and child? They are known as the tigress and jackal." Then the sannyasi asked Srila Prabhupada, "Prabhupada, I know why the woman is called a tigress. But why are the children considered jackals?" Prabhupada replied, "Well, the children in so many ways, they create so many inconveniences for the father. They are always requiring things and sometimes disturbing him, and he cannot sleep. In this way, it is like eating the flesh of the father. This is the business of jackals, eating flesh. So the children are like jackals. They are always putting the father in so much disturbance and difficulty." So I was sitting there thinking, gee, here I am and Prabhupada is telling me to stay with the tiger and jackal. So then I said, "Prabhupada, I think I should come with you." And Prabhupada simply said, "All right." Los Angeles, February 9th through 10th, 1975. Sri Dayananda Goswami. When we would get in the car to go on the morning walk, Srila Prabhupada would always smell like sandalwood, and there would also be the aroma of flowers, because he would always wear flower garlands. Prabhupada was always very clean, with fresh tilak. So immediately when he would sit in the car would become spiritualized and sanctified. All illusion would be gone. And many times, as we would pull away from the curb, Prabhupada would look out the window and he would see the particular Los Angeles neighborhood we were in, and would often recite this verse, Hare Nam, Hare Nam, Hare Nam Maiva Kevalam. He would recite it with great feelings, almost like a mother seeing her child in a dangerous or diseased situation. With great intensity, Prabhupada would recite this, urging them all to take to Krishna consciousness. ISKCON Los Angeles, New Dwarka, the Western World headquarters, was burgeoning with many Krishna-conscious projects. Book distribution was booming. The devotee population was growing. Money was available and was utilized in various technological and cultural preaching departments. Srila Prabhupada visited for the first time the spacious BBT warehouse where the books were stored and shipped out to the ISKCON centers around the world. A trail of devotees in several cars followed Prabhupada's car as he pulled up in front of the large warehouse. He entered the front reception office. On the wall were framed color reproductions of the covers of Back to Godhead magazine in consecutive issues. Srila Prabhupada stopped before a large framed painting of Sita Devi, the wife of Advaita Acharya, as she came to pay respects to the newborn baby Nimai, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Srila Prabhupada asked who had painted it, and when told the name of one of his disciples, remarked, "She has good talent." Rameshwar, the manager of the BBT, was acting as Prabhupada's tour guide through the warehouse. "We have 2 warehouses," Rameshwar said, and he led Srila Prabhupada onto the floor of a vast storage room with its ceiling 3 stories high. Everywhere stood stacks and stacks of books in cartons. "So, are they going out or simply stacking there?" Srila Prabhupada asked. Rameshwar: "They've been greatly reduced since they first arrived." Wearing his Swami cap pushed jauntily back on his head and walking regally with his cane, Srila Prabhupada surveyed the warehouse with pleasure. "So Hangsa Duda," he said, turning, "you have to make a godam like this." Hangsa Duda smiled and agreed. "Then you will defeat these charges," said Srila Prabhupada. "When the German nation will accept these books, then that will be the proper reply to the charges." "This forklift lifts the pallets high up to the ceiling," Rameshwar pointed out. Prabhupada asked for a demonstration, and the driver hurried to start up the engine. Meanwhile, Rameshwar pointed out special racks holding 500 copies of each of Prabhupada's books for the library party, which was traveling and selling full sets to university libraries across the country. As the forklift began moving, Prabhupada remarked, "I first saw this machine in the Commonwealth Pier, Boston. The boy driving the truck became so nervous before Prabhupada that he could not operate it properly. Usually he is very careful." Rameshwar apologized. Rameshwar explained that the rent was $1,800 a month, a good price for that area. He told Prabhupada that a speaker system played Prabhupada's lectures in the warehouse throughout the day. Prabhupada remarked, "Achcha," and chuckled with pleasure. They then entered the second warehouse, which stored Back to Godhead magazines. Prabhupada asked about the arrangement for fire, and the devotees told him they had fire insurance and fire alarms. He saw where the Bhagavad Gitas were stored, as well as Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita volumes. Some of them had just arrived from the printer. While walking in the warehouse, Prabhupada mentioned the dramatization some of the devotees had performed for him the previous evening. "Now we have got Chaitanya Charitamrita and Bhagavatam. If such demonstrations are done very nicely, it will be very much appreciated, even by the public. We can collect some money." Standing in the midst of the bound volumes, Prabhupada elaborated on the theatrical possibilities of their dramatization. The devotees could act in pantomime, he said, and soundtracks could narrate plays in many different languages. In this way, they could tour India and specifically attend the upcoming Mayapur and Vrindavan festivals. Theatrical talents, all talents, were acquired from austerity and should be used to glorify Krishna. "Krishna is Uttama Shloka," Prabhupada said, as the devotees crowded around in between the aisles of stacked books. So we have got so many of Krishna's pastimes, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes. We can overflood. Just like you can overflood with this literature, we can overflood this art, music, everything we can utilize. In any way one is addicted. Let him eat only, let him sing only, let him paint only, let him dance only. We have got everything. That is Krishna consciousness. Let him do business only. Yes, engineering, construct temples. It is an all-perfect movement. That is Krishna, all attractive. Everyone can become attracted and give up everything. He will be attracted by Krishna in such a way that he will give up all nonsense. That is Krishna consciousness. All other attraction finished. Anya bilashita shunyam. Simply Krishna. Prabhupada walked on until he faced an especially large area of tall stacked cartons. What are these? He asked. Back to Godhead magazines, said Hridayananda Maharaj. Rameshwar, these boxes have come from the printer all ready to go to different countries, and they stamp the address on it. These are those newspapers you saw yesterday called Spiritual Revolution. Prabhupada, I think this revolution is not very important. Make revolution with magazine, this Back to Godhead. And what are these? Rameshwar pointed out the Chaitanya Charitamritas. One after another, Prabhupada examined the stacks and then the individual books on racks. Sometimes he handled them, leafing through their pages, and sometimes he touched the cartons with his cane. Just before Christmas, Rameshwar exclaimed with exuberance, this wall was filled up, and now it is practically empty. We have sold so many books just in a few months. All up to the ceiling it was filled. Now we have to reprint. Prabhupada, now this is only the English language. In every language we should have such a big Godam. Turning to Hridayananda Maharaj, he said, you have taken Spanish. And turning to Hangsaduta, he said, and you, in German, let them overflood, no other literature. Devotees surrounding Prabhupada burst out in triumphant laughter. Prabhupada then quoted a Bengali phrase, they'll say, no, no, we don't want any other literature. In the presence of his books, Prabhupada was exhilarated, and the thought of how more and more books could be written, printed, and distributed in many different languages made him ecstatic. Although the present warehouse in LA was awesomely large, Prabhupada envisioned beyond it to other countries and other warehouses. I think no religious publisher has seen such a big Godam in their life. Prabhupada widened his eyes and looked at the others. Throughout the whole world, he continued, as soon as they will hear about religious books, they immediately avoid it, especially the communist country. Bring some communist countryman. Show him that you are trying to avoid God. Now see how we are preaching God. Prabhupada was next shown to the office of Kirtiraj Das, who was in charge of sending out the orders received from the college libraries around the country. Kirtiraj showed Prabhupada how a well-known Christian magazine had recently reduced the quality of its printing from an expensive color magazine to a plain paper edition. They have degraded, Prabhupada remarked. Now we have almost 125 standing orders for Srimad Bhagavatam, said Kirtiraj, and 100 for Chaitanya Charitamrita. That's nice, Prabhupada replied. The devotees then showed him the Golden Avatar studios, where tapes of his lectures were kept as masters and duplicated by high-speed equipment. This is a complete library of all your lectures, Rameshwar explained. We keep it carefully because we know it is very important. They are cataloging it according to the title of the book, so if someone wants to see what your Divine Grace has lectured on the Bhagavad Gita, they can find it, or from Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, or whatever. They have an index system. Prabhupada approved. Very good. Rameshwar introduced the technician for duplicating the tapes and pointed out the extensive equipment. This makes 4 copies of the cassette every 3 minutes, Rameshwar continued. So we are mass-producing your lectures. Prabhupada, less than 1 minute for 1 copy. Rameshwar described how devotees were buying Prabhupada's tapes on a subscription rate of 3 a week, and orders were coming in from all over the world. American organization, Prabhupada proudly said. He next met Swarup Das, the corresponding secretary. Rameshwar explained how he answered all letters regarding Prabhupada's books and encouraged the people to become life members. I was also doing that, Prabhupada reminisced. When I was Dr. Bose's manager, any inquiry coming from the outside, I must continue correspondence with him until he becomes a customer. That I was doing. Prabhupada saw one office after another until he had completely toured all the warehouse facilities. Nice, well-equipped Godam, he remarked. And they then left the building, walking through a light rain to their waiting car. Rameshwar pointed to Prabhupada's name printed on the building. Prabhupada looked up. Yes, that's nice. They will be inquisitive. What is that book? Riding back to the temple in the car, Prabhupada reflected. I have said that there is no happiness in this material world, and that's a fact. But if there is a little happiness, that is in America. So you are favored by Krishna. Utilize this favor of Krishna in glorifying Krishna. Then it is successful. Avichutorta kavibir nirupito yad utamashloka. To become extraordinary in any branch of facilities requires austerities. So, when one has acquired that, he should engage it for glorifying the Supreme. Yad utamashloka gunanu varnanam. As BBT manager, Rameshwar went to Srila Prabhupada when the BBT could no longer afford to print the hardbound Krishna book in 2 volumes. Since Srila Prabhupada had already authorized the paperback version's 3 volumes, Rameshwar hoped he would give permission to print the hardbound in 3 volumes also. Otherwise, Rameshwar could see no way they could afford to reprint the Krishna book in 2 volumes, and the book would have to go out of print. Srila Prabhupada replied that he had originally planned Krishna book in 2 volumes. He didn't want to change it. Rameshwar presented the economic arguments. Because of an oil embargo, the printing industry had suffered badly. Prices had gone up 50%. The BBT already had a contract with Dai Nippon to reprint the book. They had already bought the paper, so they were obliged to go ahead, yet Dai Nippon had just raised their prices and would not honor their original contracts. After discussing the various economic difficulties for over an hour, Srila Prabhupada unhappily consented to reprint the hardbound Krishna book in 3 volumes. Rameshwar then mentioned that Dai Nippon had said the book would be much cheaper if the BBT printed it the same size as the Srimad Bhagavatam instead of the larger size. When Prabhupada heard that, he banged his fist on the desk. He had planned it in that size. Nothing would change it. He would hear no more of it. He then told Rameshwar to leave the room. Staggering down the stairs, Rameshwar realized that he had just been thrown out of the room by his spiritual master. But he also felt ecstatic in appreciation of Srila Prabhupada. For the first time, he began to appreciate how meticulously Srila Prabhupada planned every detail of his books. Not only did Prabhupada carefully prepare the translations and purports, but he also considered the market, the cover pictures. Everything about the book Prabhupada had considered deeply. As a humble servant, Rameshwar was surprised and awestruck as he began to understand how deeply Prabhupada was involved in all decisions regarding his books. Rameshwar. One time I was up in Prabhupada's room and we were talking again about BBT printing. It was an involved conversation. But suddenly, right in the middle of it, Prabhupada's prasadam arrived, placed by his servant on a little table Prabhupada ate from in his bedroom. As soon as the prasadam arrived, Prabhupada rose from his seat, moved to that room, sat down, and became totally immersed, almost like in a trance of honoring Krishna's prasadam. It was so transcendental, it was as if I suddenly ceased to exist. Prabhupada did not say even a word. It was just the prasadam, and Prabhupada became absorbed in Krishna. So I very quietly offered my obeisances and hurriedly left the room. During this visit, Srila Prabhupada saw the first completed diorama by the artists engaged in doll making. In 1973, he had requested several of his disciples to visit India and learn the ancient art of making lifelike figures from earth and straw. He wanted to create artistic exhibits showing the pastimes of Krishna and Lord Chaitanya, as well as scenes depicting the Krishna conscious philosophy, such as the transmigration of the soul and karma. Prabhupada's disciples, Bharadwaja, Adi Deva, and others, had gone to Bengal and had, with great endeavor, mastered the art of creating these dolls. Now returning to Los Angeles, they had set up a studio for mass production and had finished their first diorama, a miniature of Lord Krishna and Arjuna on the chariot at the Battle of Kurukshetra. Prabhupada entered the artist's studio, followed as usual by as many people as could fit in the room. He stood before the diorama. The models were exquisite, the figures as realistic in detail as figures in the best wax museum, and they were dressed and bejeweled like temple deities. The horses and chariots were startlingly lifelike. The scene was that depicted on the cover of Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is. Prabhupada's response was spontaneous delight. His face broke into an ecstatic smile. The horses are more beautiful than Krishna, Prabhupada commented. There was a groan from the devotees. That is because they are the servants of Krishna, he said, smiling. Later, Srila Prabhupada instructed the Los Angeles leaders to give the doll makers full financial support. His spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, had been very keen to create such doll exhibits on the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. And that was how Srila Prabhupada had received the idea. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had also been willing to spend big sums of money to put a large collection of dolls on exhibit in Calcutta. In collecting for this project, he had introduced a system of keeping his temples in debt. He would get his disciples to collect for a specific project, but when they gave him the money, he would spend it on dioramas. Then he would again return to those same disciples and request money for the same project they had already collected for. But we gave it to you, Guru Maharaj. No, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati would reply. That which you gave me has already been spent on dioramas. Now I need it for the original purpose. He had been convinced that these artistic exhibits could attract and convert people in the West. And so, Srila Prabhupada was intent to open diorama museums and exhibits all over the world. Srila Prabhupada spent 2 days in Los Angeles. It was the ideal center for his headquarters, with the largest number of his disciples in one city, many of whom were also leaders in book distribution. No other center at that time had as many departments and expansive projects. His own living quarters were also comfortable, a pleasantly decorated 3-room apartment and a private garden with many varieties of aromatic flowers. He enjoyed sitting in that garden in the early evening with just a few disciples while one of them read aloud from the Krishna book. The climate of Southern California was also to Srila Prabhupada's liking. And as for the temple worship of the deities, Sri Sri Rukmini Dwarkadish, Srila Prabhupada considered the standard perhaps the highest of all the centers in his ISKCON. And yet, he could only spend a few days before moving on. Krishna has given me hundreds of nice places of residence, Srila Prabhupada laughed, but his order is you cannot stay. Prabhupada was explaining his transcendental predicament to a few disciples gathered in his room on one of the last days of his visit in Los Angeles. I'll tell you one humorous story in this connection, which is a little long, Prabhupada said, and he appeared to hesitate. I don't wish to divert your attention, but it is an interesting story. That is also mentioned in the Bhagavatam, Anikatana. One may have many nice places to live, still he should think, I have no place to live. That is one of the spiritual items. What is that story? Hansaduta asked, and the other devotees laughed. They were eager to hear the story and didn't want Prabhupada to avoid it. Prabhupada smiled. The story is, he said, that there was a joker. His name was Gopal Ban. He was the joker of a king, Raja Krishna. You know that place, Krishna Nagar, near Mayapur? He was the king of that place. So the kings used to keep a joker to please them by words. So this joker, Gopal Ban, was constructing a new building for himself. It was almost finished. But there was as yet no opening ceremony. So the Raja advised one of his friends, if you can go and pass stool in that new house of Gopal's, then I will give you so much prize. Go and pass stool there. Prabhupada chuckled. So the man said, yes, I'll do it. So one day the man made his plan. As he was passing the new house, all of a sudden he entered. Gopal, I am very much called by nature. Kindly show me where I can pass stool. Gopal was intelligent, and he could understand there was some trick. Yes, yes, Gopal said, there is the lavatory. Come here. You can use it. But then he made so many conditions. The door must be opened so you may pass stool, but I will see that you are passing stool. How is that possible? The man asked. Can I use it or not? No, it is not possible, Gopal said. You can pass stool here, but you cannot pass urine. If you pass urine, then I shall kill you. So passing stool, Prabhupada commented, without passing urine, how is it possible? You have come to pass stool, Gopal said, and I will allow you. That you can do here, but don't pass a drop of urine. Prabhupada laughed heartily and said, so that is my position. Krishna says, you may have hundreds of centers and places, but you cannot live anywhere. That is Krishna's order. It is a plan not to become attached. Devotee. Just like Narada Muni got that curse from Lord Brahma. Prabhupada. Yes, not Lord Brahma, but Daksha Raja. He cursed Narada Muni that he cannot stay anywhere more than 3 minutes. Narada Muni's business is preaching, so every one of us, we have to become disciples of Narada Muni. And thus, Srila Prabhupada, the greatest living disciple of Narada Muni, made plans to travel next to Mexico, and then to Venezuela, on his world tour for preaching Krishna consciousness. His disciple in charge of South America, Sri Dayananda Maharaj, had joined Prabhupada in Hawaii and come with him to Los Angeles to ensure Prabhupada's keeping his promise to visit South America. So, Prabhupada's promise was firm. As he said, Lord Krishna had arranged it that he should go constantly from place to place, and wherever he went, Prabhupada tended expertly the delicate creepers of devotional service growing in the hearts of his disciples. He He also stoked the fires of Krishna consciousness and fanned them into blazes. And in each place, he left behind more dedicated followers than before. He gave further orders to be executed, and he redefined and clarified directions for guiding and expanding his Krishna consciousness movement.